Hi, this is Alex from devstories.eu. Kubernetes and Helm Fundamentals, Episode 1 of 10. For years, Google ran its global search and email infrastructure using a highly secretive system named after Star Trek's most terrifying villains. They had to invent it because existing server management simply broke at their scale. Today, we're looking at the origins from Borg to Kubernetes and why modern enterprises rely on it. To understand why Kubernetes exists, you have to look at how application deployment evolved. In the traditional deployment era, you ran applications on physical servers. There was no way to define resource boundaries. If one application took up most of the memory, other applications on that physical server suffered. You could buy a separate physical machine for every app, but that resulted in expensive, underutilized hardware. Next came the virtualized deployment era. You ran multiple virtual machines on a single physical server CPU. VMs isolated applications and provided a level of security, but each VM still required a full, heavy operating system. Finally, we arrived at the container deployment era. Containers are similar to VMs, but they share the underlying operating system among the applications. Because they are decoupled from the underlying hardware, they are lightweight, fast to start, and portable across different clouds and operating system distributions. But containers introduced a new problem. If you run a global enterprise application, you do not just have one container, you have thousands. If a container goes down, another needs to start immediately. If traffic spikes, you need to spin up more containers and distribute the network load evenly. You cannot manage that manually across hundreds of machines. Google faced this exact problem long before the rest of the industry. They built an internal container cluster manager called Borg to automate the orchestration of hundreds of thousands of jobs. When it became clear the rest of the software world needed this same capability, Google engineers started an open-source project based on the lessons learned from Borg. They gave it a Star Trek reference, originally calling it Project 7 of 9, a nod to a Borg drone who escaped the collective. That project eventually launched as Kubernetes. The steering wheel logo you see today has 7 spokes as a quiet tribute to that original project name. This is the part that matters. Kubernetes provides you with a framework to run distributed systems resiliently. It takes care of scaling and failover for your application. If a container crashes, Kubernetes replaces it. If a node fails, it reschedules the containers on healthy nodes. It handles service discovery, meaning a container can be found using a DNS name or its own IP address, and it balances the load so no single container is overwhelmed. It also manages storage orchestration, letting you automatically mount local storage or cloud providers, and it automates rollouts and rollbacks. You describe the desired state of your deployed containers, and Kubernetes changes the actual state to the desired state at a controlled rate. You do not write scripts to manage server state. You declare what you want, and the system makes it happen. The core takeaway here is that Kubernetes is not just a hosting environment, it is a control loop that constantly measures reality against your expectations and corrects the difference. Before we wrap up, if you want to help us keep making these episodes, search for Dev Stories EU on Patreon. We appreciate the support. That's all for this one. Thanks for listening and keep building.